It's a Mailbag Monday. We've got your questions about Maikel Garcia of the Royals. What is the minor league baseball development list? And the wildest box score for a doubleheader that you've ever seen, courtesy of our friends with the Rocket City Trash Pandas. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, editor-in-chief of BraveToday.com, freelance baseball writer and podcaster. Thank you for making this your first listen. Every single day, we're probably part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And today's episode is made possible by our friends with Ultimate Baseball GM. If you've dreamt of becoming an MLB GM and managing your baseball franchise, this is the game for you. Go to ultimatebaseballgm.com to download the game, look it up in the App Store, and our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when you use the promo code LOCKEDON, in all caps, in the game. As we do every Monday, mailbag episode, all of these questions are courtesy of Locked On MLB Prospects listeners. If you have a question for the show, I'm on Twitter at CrosbyBaseball, show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. You can email us, lockedonmlbprospects@gmail.com, or drop your questions in a Locked On MLB Prospects Discord. Links in the episode description. Links in the show notes. First one came at 20 different people. The upside of doing a show like this and talking about minor league baseball all day, every day, is when something wild in minor league baseball happens, you find out about it pretty quickly. There was a doubleheader on Saturday between the Rocket City Trash Pandas, AA affiliate of the Los Angeles Angels, and the Chattanooga Lookouts, AA affiliate of the Cincinnati Reds. Rocket City went 1-1. That's not that weird. Game 1 was a 7-5 loss. Game 2 was a 3-0 win. What is weird is that Rocket City in both games combined, so 14 innings, 7-inning doubleheaders here, and 14 innings combined allowed one hit. And they lost game 1 7-5 on a no-hitter. So let's explain what happened. Starting pitcher Coleman Crowe takes the mound in game 1, and he is absolutely cruising. Ends up giving the Trash Panda 6 innings, no hits, gives up a walk in the first, and there's a drop strike 3 in the third, and that's the only base runners of the game as we enter the 7th and final inning. When Ben Joyce comes into the game, it is a 3-0 ball game. Start the 7th inning. Walk. Second walk. Runners on first and second. He gets an out to second base. Pop fly. Nobody advances. Fly ball. After that, walk. Loads the bases. Strikeout. You are 1 out away from preserving the no-hitter, albeit with now 4 walks in the game instead of 1. Bases loaded, walk. Scores a run. Okay, that's fine. You are still up 3-1. That's fine. Ben Joyce gets the fly ball he needs, right? Induces a fly ball from Jose Torres to center fielder Jeremiah Jackson. Make the catch. Game's over. No hitter secured. Jeremiah Jackson cannot make the catch. Drops the ball. It's an error on the center fielder. 3 runs score. It is now a 4-3 lead for the Chattanooga Lookouts. Still no hits. Pitching change to reliever Eric Torres. Eric Torres comes in the game. There is 1 runner on because the 3 runners all scored on the drop fly ball. Hit by pitch. Hit by pitch. Hit by pitch. That is your 5th run. Bases are loaded. Then he walks a guy. That is your 6th run. Then there is a wild pitch. Scores a runner from third. Then there is a hit by pitch to reload the bases, and a strikeout finally, mercifully, ends the inning. 7 runs scored for Chattanooga on 5 walks, 4 hit by pitches, a wild pitch, and an error. Rocket City comes back in the bottom half. Catcher Edgar Cuero hits a 2-run single, makes it 7-5. The closer for Chattanooga comes in, gets the next two hitters to strike out. Game over, 7-5 loss. Did not allow a hit. This was going nuts across Twitter on Saturday when this happened. Here's the weirdest thing about minor league baseball is when something happens that's wild and crazy like this, odds are it's probably happened before. It turns out in this case, in 1948, August 31st, 1948, in the Pony League, was the first time that a team had allowed 7 runs to score and a no-hitter and lost the game. The Wellsville Red Sox no-hit the Lockport Reds and lost 7-3 off of a lot of stuff like this. I don't think it was all in the same inning, but off of a lot of stuff like this. So not even the first time you've had a 7-run no-hitter where you lost. That's what makes minor league baseball so wild and crazy. Just about everything that can possibly happen has happened. Turn around to the second game. Sam Bachman gets the ball for game 2. 2021 first rounder out of Miami of Ohio. He goes out there, 5 innings pitched, 1 hit, 9 strikeouts. They hand it off to Brett Crew. He goes 2 innings, no hits, 4 strikeouts, 3-0 victory. So on the day, the Rocket City Trash Pandas allow 1 hit, give up 7 runs, and go 1 for 1 on the day over 14 innings of baseball. That's baseball for you. That's minor league baseball for you. Absolutely wild. And we've talked about Ben Joyce on this show before. We talked about he's wild at times. He needs to be able to rein it in. And you can see both him and Eric Torres obviously had a lot of issues. It's hard to blame Torres. I'm guessing, I did not watch this game. I'm guessing they got him up pretty quickly and he wasn't entirely ready. But just Ben Joyce comes into a game that you are leading 3-0 and he comes out and you are down 4-3 and they have not gotten a hit. That is a huge kind of mental obstacle for a lot of players to overcome. And so I'm curious to see how Ben Joyce bounces back from this. I do think he's a good talent. We talked on the show before. He's got to work on the control. Also has to work on the workload. Pitching on back-to-back days is not something he's been asked to do in either his college or his pro career. So something we definitely have to work on there. But interested to see what comes out of this for Ben Joyce. Happy for Sam Bachman. 1-hit game is fantastic. And it's just funny how the first no-hitter in minor league baseball in 2023 has a 7-run inning by the team that was no-hit. So that's baseball. In just a minute, I want to talk about some individual players. Maikel Garcia of the Royals, Alex McFarlane of the Phillies. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends with Pro Baseball GM. Coolest game I've played in a long time. We've talked about this game on the show before, but you get to control every single aspect of a major league franchise. Whether it's hiring coaches and staff, whether it's going through free agency, whether it's scouting prospects before you draft them and then developing them when they're in your farm system, dealing with the personalities involved. Incredibly challenging, realistic, and deep game world. Very much a fan of this game. Very much a fan of the mental challenge that comes along with running an MLB franchise. But again, what I love about this is it's completely free. It's playable offline. You can play on the go whenever you want, as much as you want. You don't have to deal with time-restricted things that tie back to the real world or any of that. You play as little or as much as you want, when you want, offline for completely free. So Locked On MLB Prospects listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when you use the promo code LOCKEDON in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, visit ProBaseballGM.com, scan the code on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, or look it up in the app stores. It's ProBaseballGM.com for the Ultimate Baseball GM app. Start your dynasty today. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends with Rocket Money. If you have had that situation of you sign up for a service and they give you a free trial, and then you tend to forget about it, and you realize later they've been charging you for weeks or months or years, Rocket Money is the app for you. That try it free for 30 days thing, they're banking on you forgetting that you did this. So I downloaded Rocket Money It's fantastic. It's a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, helps you monitor your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have a subscription that they forgot about. I had one for Peacock. I had picked up Peacock last year to watch some baseball. I had forgotten that it was going. The Rocket Money found that subscription, helped me cancel it, helped me save money. It also can track your spending in real time, aggregate everything from all kind of disparate accounts, whether it's credit cards, different bank accounts, all that stuff in one place. So you can categorize your expenses, track your budget in real time, and get an alert if any sort of spending is outside of usual patterns and could be an indicator of fraud. So stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb to use Rocket Money. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. Reminder, all of these questions are from listeners of the show. Didn't bother giving names for the Trash Pandas ones because literally like 30 people reached out to me about that. But Jacob on YouTube asked about Maikel Garcia for the Royals. And so kind of backstory here, 2016 IFA, somebody who's had a little bit of a slow burn through the system, got some time up last year, got 9 games, looked good in that small sample size. But he kind of wants to know about what are the odds of Maikel Garcia making the bigs this year and where do you think he'll play? And I think you're going to see Maikel Garcia up some point in time this year. Last year, 118 games between AA and AAA. Okay, so spent the entire year in the upper minors, and that was his first taste of the upper minors. The highest he had gotten was high A in 2021 at age 21. One of those guys that was set back a little bit by losing that 2020 season. But combined between AA and AAA, 285, 359, 427, 11 home runs, 46 extra base hits, 58 walks to 102 strikeouts, and 39 of 47 on stolen bases. The big thing for me with Maikel Garcia, we saw a jump in offensive production last year. It feels like it kind of stuck. And you saw some of that in quad A, in high A quad cities in 2021, but we really saw the hit tool get better. And so like it looks for the first time like it's an above average hit tool now. I think he's probably the best defensive infielder in the system. And the question about does he become an everyday starter or does he become a utility guy is all around really 2 things. One, he can't control. It's how well does Bobby Witt's defense look at shortstop. But the other thing is what is his power ceiling? So again, 11 home runs last year in 118 games. Those 46 extra base hits were 34 of the 35 were doubles. And that's really kind of the game. It's very much like gap-to-gap doubles power. He hit 34 of them. Really good hand-eye coordination, good barrel control. It's just the whole question here is what is the ceiling for the power? If he's a guy that's going to get you maybe 10 home runs in a season, it's hard to say, yes, we'll move Bobby Witt to third base and make Nicky Lopez the utility guy for your plus defense. Again, best infield defender in the system, above average arm, really good range, timing, hands, all of that stuff. But it's really hard to say we'll move Bobby Witt Jr., a potential MVP candidate, we think, to third base to bring you in. If he can work a little bit more on the launch angle, a little bit more on the offense, and as of time of recording, he's got a home run in his first 8 games in AAA Omaha, slugging .567 right now. Again, small sample size, 8 games, does not include Sunday's game, because I think it's being played right now. And so if you can increase that to a 15 home run ceiling, not even 20, just 15, you're in a scenario where you can make Nicky Lopez the utility guy and make Maikel Garcia the starting shortstop. You get the benefit of the plus defense, and then he can hit enough. You can put him, 7th, 8th, 9th in the lineup, and you'll be fine. Again, it's hard to take a guy with 40 grade power and make him a starter at the major league level and expect to be able to contend for the division. So that's the big determining factor on Maikel Garcia. So we're watching a lot in Omaha this year to see what he does. J. Mike in our Discord, Phillies fan, asked about Alex McFarlane, 2022 fourth rounder, right-handed pitcher out of University of Miami. They drafted him as a starter. Like, they announced him at the draft as a starter, and he had 3 starts with Low A Clearwater when he got drafted last year. Really feels like he's going to be a reliever. He was a reliever in college. In 2022, Miami moved him to the rotation, as well as moving their closer to the rotation, and then ended up putting McFarlane, after 4 starts, put him back in the bullpen, and he made 23 appearances out of the bullpen. So 6'4", 205, good frame, and has used some time to improve his stuff between getting drafted and now. The fastball in college, above average pitch, sat 96, could touch 98 or so. We saw a little bit in Clearwater as well. The control of it's not great, and the shape is not necessarily great. It's kind of dead straight. It's that Hunter Green problem he had last year. But in spring so far, it touched 100. It was repeatedly above 100 miles an hour. So it looks like a much better pitch as far as velocity goes than it was last year, sitting 96. Now it's sitting right around 99, 100, getting up over 100 miles an hour. Still not sure about the shape improvements to it, but the velocity is improved. The slider is absolutely a plus pitch. Sits around 85 or so, tons of spin, like 2,700 RPM. Gets a swing and miss of almost 50% on it. So every other slider, a dude is swinging and cannot make contact with it. Has a changeup, also sits right there in the mid-80s, so you don't love having both pitches in the same velocity band. But it's kind of a split change, so the movement's unique. He didn't throw it a lot last year in Clearwater. We saw it in college. We didn't see it a lot last year, so we need to see him use that more this year. If you expect him to be a starter, he's going to have to be able to do that. I really think this is a scenario you can let him start in the minors, but it feels like you can probably get him to the bigs sooner when you realize he's a reliever and he has the ability to do 2 innings at a time, or maybe even 3 innings at a time, and then come back and pitch 2 or 3 days later. So couple options here. Going to be watching to see what happens this year to figure out, is he a reliever, is he a starter? But either way, I like the stuff. I like the improvement on the velocity on the fastball. We just need the shape to have a little bit more movement to it so that it's not just dead straight, because all that is, in that case, is a timing issue. And yes, the 100 miles an hour makes it harder to time up, but you can still time it up if you're sitting fastball. So you've got to make sure you can land the slider for strikes. You've got to unveil the changeup and use that more to keep guys from sitting fastball. And then you have to hopefully improve the shape of the fastball a little bit. Third guy, Tomcat in our Discord, Brian Gonzalez for the San Diego Padres, left-handed pitcher. 2014 third rounder out of high school. On his 4th organization, Orioles, then Rockies, then Nationals, then Padres. Don't necessarily know a ton about him. He hasn't made his major league debut yet. He spent most of his time in the minors, and again, you've heard he's been on multiple organizations. Again, 3rd round pick by the Orioles, was granted free agency at the end of the 2020 season, signed with the Rockies, was with the Hartford Yard Goats, went to the Albuquerque Isotopes, and then in 2022 was in Double-A with the Nationals the entire season, and now is in San Antonio in the Padres organization. Played some winter ball, I believe, in Mexico as well. I like a lot of the stuff that I've seen. It's something where the control seems to be one of the limiting factors. He was a starter up until 2019. He's been decently effective in the role, but when you look at his his minor league numbers, even as recently as last year, 42 1/3 innings, 3.4 ERA, which for a reliever that can get skewed very easily. 42 strikeouts, so a strikeout per 9, or 9 strikeouts per 9, 1 per inning, but 26 walks, 5.5 per 9, and that was a higher number than a lot of his career numbers. A lot of his career numbers were, 4 and change, or even some 3s and change, but it kind of feels like the limiting factor so far has been struggling to miss bats necessarily at the minor league level, and then consistently landing stuff for strikes. A little bit of work to do there, but absolutely pulling for Brian Gonzalez. 27 this year. It's the kind of guy that you get really excited about when they finally get to make their debut, because he's been in the minor leagues since 2014. He's been in there almost a decade now, and so you want to see guys like this get a chance to debut and make the majors. In just a minute, we've got a question about what is the development list for the minor leagues, as well as thoughts on college's big pitching matchup between Paul Skenes and Chase Dollander, because they might be the first two pitchers off the board in the draft this fall. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends with Sorare. It's a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace that kind of transforms fans into owners. You have officially licensed digital cards with players from all 30 MLB teams. I just recently have made my team as well. The way that this works is you have ownership of these cards. You pick your team for the week. There's 2 competitions per week. So there's 2 game weeks per actual week. So you're filling 7 positions: starting pitcher, relief pitcher, corner infielder, middle infielder, outfielder, an extra hitter, which can be any position, and a flex, which can be literally anybody but Shohei Ohtani, because he breaks the game. But the idea here is it's an action-based scoring system. You get positive or negative points for your team based on how they do, and you're either playing Monday through Thursday or Friday through Sunday, but there's a leaderboard. And at the end of game weeks, managers who are near or at the top of the leaderboard can get all kind of different rewards. Some of them are rare cards. Some of them are game tickets, merchandise, signed jerseys. There's VIP experiences, things like that. So, really interesting game. Head to sorare.com/lockedon. That's SORARE.com/lockedon to draft your team of free player cards. Set your lineup and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. Question came up from Brian in our Discord. He's like, I'm seeing in the transactions a lot of guys getting moved to the development list. So what is the development list? And somebody in the Discord went ahead and answered him, but I wanted to share that and give a little bit more context. The development list is an alternative to the active roster in the minor leagues that you can move a guy if he is at the spring training complex or at one of the affiliate facilities for the purposes of development or conditioning. The idea is you can, if you want to pull him out of the lineup for a week to work on something, and it has to be at least a week. You have to spend at least 7 days when you get put on it. You can take him out of the active lineup and get that roster spot back for someone else so that this team can still compete. Now, he counts against your in-season domestic reserve list, your number of players you're allowed to have stateside. He counts against that still, but he doesn't count against the active roster of that affiliate. A great example of this happening is when the White Sox brought a bunch of their prospects to Birmingham last year for Project Birmingham. They brought all of their roving instructors, their specialized instructors, their extra coaches, brought them all to Birmingham, had a bunch of guys there on the development list, and so they were able to work with them. They can do batting practice, fielding practice, pitchers can throw bullpens, a guy can work as the bullpen catcher, he can work as a batting practice pitcher, he can even be a base coach in a game. They just can't actually play. So a couple different places you see this used. Really, there's like 5 scenarios you see the development list used. For hitters, it's a little bit more rare for a hitter to be on the development list because typically you would do that for something like you wanted to take a hitter and work on tinkering with their swing, fixing their stance, things like that. Because the fact they're playing every day, hitters don't do this nearly as often as a pitcher does, but that would be a reason you would have a hitter on the development list outside of a Project Birmingham type situation. Pitchers, there's a couple different reasons. One is just workload management, right? This came up a lot in 2021 after guys missed all of 2020, and then it comes up a lot with guys who are in their first year after being drafted. You want to be careful about not increasing workloads too much. So you can take a pitcher mid-season, You can give him a week or 2 weeks off on the development list. He's not going to be pitching in games. He still has the ability to travel with the team. He still has the ability to throw bullpens, to receive instruction, but you're taking off the expectation of competitive innings to lessen the workload. The Cubs were really good about this in the minors in 2021, cycling their pitchers in and off of the development list to handle the workloads. It's like you can skip a start for a guy or skip a couple starts without having to carry him on the active roster and handicap the bullpen and the rest of the rotation. Another reason is if you're wanting to work on a specific pitcher's grip, you're wanting to give him a new pitch, you're wanting to work on the way he's throwing something now as far as the grip and things like that, you can put him on the list and he can have time, again, to work with the coaches, to throw bullpens, to work on a new pitch without trying to make it work during the game. Now, some organizations will just tell their guys to do it in the game. And so sometimes minor league stats get skewed that way. But some organizations will just put a guy on the development list, let him do that. Same thing if they have some sort of delivery or mechanics issue. Another time you see that is it can't be used for a guy's injury. But there's been times when I've seen, especially coming out of spring training, a guy isn't necessarily in game shape yet. Maybe he had an off-season injury. Maybe he just wasn't that focused in his work. They can put him on the development list once the season starts so that he can still be with the team he's going to play with, but he can get into shape. He can work on whatever he needs to work on. And then the last reason is sometimes just to stash a guy. There's been occasions you're not supposed to do it if a player is injured. And teams don't share why they put guys on this list. But it could be something, it came up a lot during COVID as well, where you could have a guy that could travel with the team and be activated in case of injury. But since he'd already been around the team, you didn't have to worry about him bringing in COVID from a different affiliate or from the outside. So we saw it a lot then, and you can still see it now. Let's say you have two catchers, and one of the catchers is a little nicked up, and you're going on a road trip for 6 days. You can have a guy on the development list, let him travel with the team, and if that catcher who's a little nicked up can't play, you can activate the development list catcher, put him on your active roster, and put the injured catcher on the injured list. So you have him there, he's at the ballpark, he can be in the dugout in uniform. He just can't play in the game where you need him, but starting the next day, he can be activated and can be available on the road trip. Could be as simple as that. So, interesting uses for the development list. I'm curious to see what happens as far as how teams continue to use this and evolve it. From what I understand, the teams like this flexibility. Again, we'll see what happens. I wonder if somebody's going to recreate the Project Birmingham that the White Sox did this year. Last question was from Anthony on YouTube, and he asked about the college pitching matchup we saw between LSU and Tennessee with Tennessee's Chase Dollander versus LSU's Paul Skenes. These pitchers are both projected to be top 5 overall picks. Big anticipated matchup, did great numbers as far as attendance, ratings, all of that. But kind of my thoughts. So LSU, Paul Skenes' team, won the game 5-2. Skenes had the better stat line. 7 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 12 strikeouts, and 107 pitches. And his stuff, his pure stuff, I think is better than Chase Dollander stuff. The fastball sat upper 90s. He touched 102, and he was hitting upper 90s with his 106th and 107th pitch of the game. That velocity carried all the way through, right? The slider's a plus pitch. He's done a lot of work to change the shape of that in the offseason to make it a more effective pitch since he got to LSU. Changeup's above average. Conversely, Chase Dollander struggled a little bit more in the outing. 4 2/3, 4 hits, 2 runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, and 89 pitches. And to me, the stuff is still really good. Fastball touches 98, sits a little bit slower than Skenes' fastball. The slider and the changeup are both really good pitches. So to me, the stuff was better for Skenes. I was more impressed with the pitching performance from Dollander because you can learn a lot about a guy when he doesn't have his best stuff and can still minimize the damage. 3 walks and 4 2/3, uncharacteristic for Chase Dollander. 4 hits and 4 2/3, uncharacteristic for Chase Dollander. Yet he only gave up 2 runs in essentially 5 innings of work without his best stuff. Very impressive performance. So better stuff was Skenes. The better pitching performance to me, as an evaluator, as somebody who would be looking at which guy would I draft, the better pitching performance was Dollander's because he didn't have his stuff and he still left his team in a position to potentially win the game. They did not, but they did not lose solely because of him. Fantastic week this week. Very excited about this. If you have questions for the show, I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. You can email us, lockedonmlbprospects@gmail.com, or drop your questions into Locked On MLB Prospects Discord. Links in the episode description, links in the show notes. Until tomorrow's show, remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.